how long can I keep finding great things to put on social media? And the answer is what, 7 years almost now. You just train your body and your brain rather, to look for what's good.
Yeah.
And the exercise of doing that lowers your stress.
So I am going to start today's podcast off with some grim news. I don't ordinarily do that, but I'm going to do that today. So all your business that you're trying to keep up with and stress, it's killing you. No, I'm serious. It's killing you. And it's probably even holding you back. So, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to figure out what to do about that. So welcome to the podcast today, Phil Barth. Phil is a speaker, trainer, and author that talks about goal achievement and stress management. And hopefully, well, not only will he be able to help us with that, but, hopefully here, he'll talk about his 15 minutes of fame on the game show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, back in 2002. So I feel like I'm in great company today since he's touched base with Regis. So Phil, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I appreciate you spending time with me to talk today.
Oh, absolutely. It's I think you bring to the table an important topic that our listeners will soon find out. But we got to start with this whole game show thing because I love to make True Man podcast history. So as far as I know, you're the first one to ever come on that's been on a game show. So tell us, what was that like? How'd that go down?
Okay. So I was on, I recorded it in 2002. It played in 2003, but it was a culmination of a 3-year obsession because when it first started in 1999, I was in a hotel in Stamford, Connecticut. I turned on the TV and I started watching it and I said, I could do this. It's a multiple choice test. Jeopardy, you got to know the answer, right? And you got to phrase it on the question and all that. This was multiple choice. And so I thought I could do this. And at the end of the show, they put up a number that you called and if you answered all the questions right, you got into a second round. And eventually some of those people would make the show. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but 200,000 people were calling every night and 10 were making the show. So
it was really a big deal back then when that first came on, if I remember right.
Yeah. So, what are the odds? 20,000 to 1 against. But I ignored that. And I kept going. Eventually, I auditioned in Chicago and I failed. I auditioned in Indianapolis, failed. I auditioned in Cleveland and succeeded. And again, it was this obsession to get on because between Indianapolis and Cleveland, and I swear I'll get to what it's like to be on the show, but between Indianapolis and Cleveland, I went on a bunch of forums and looked up, how do you pass this audition test that I'm failing so miserably? And the answer was they give you a test. And I always passed the multiple choice test because I was watching the show every night and the test was questions from shows that had already aired.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it's a recap of what I've been watching on TV, right? And then they give you another form, an audition, and a number 2 pencil, and you fill out your application. And what I learned was you don't take the pencil, you bring your own items. So I brought a 4-color pen, a highlighter, red marker, green marker, and so on. And I wrote, and so I put my stories on there that I could envision telling Meredith Vieira, who is now the host. I failed in the Regis year.
Oh.
And so it's like, what story do I have that Meredith would be interested in? And I put that in red. And so when the producer interviewed me, he's like, oh, well, tell me about this. And the story that got me on the show was, again, I'm watching the show every night. I've got young kids, doesn't matter. We're watching Millionaire tonight. And so my son is watching with me. He's about 5 at the time. And he said, okay, here in the hot seat, next in the hot seat, next in the hot seat. And my son looks at me and goes, Daddy, how hot do they make that hot seat?
I love it.
So I am the only person, I believe, in the history of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire that Meredith Vieira, once I told that story, said, so how are your buns doing right now? So
oh, very nice.
Asked me about my buns, right? So
very nice.
What was it like to be on the show? A little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I decided that, you know, when you get in that hot seat, I said, okay, what I'm going to do before every question, I'm going to close my eyes for a brief second. And when I open my eyes, there's nothing in the world except for me and the question on the monitor. Because you can get freaked out, right? There's going to be a million people.
Yeah.
There's a whole audience full of people. And they meet with you beforehand. And we actually met with Michael Davies, who invented the show and has, you know, he wanted to be a millionaire, and boy, he's a millionaire many times over, I'm sure, right? And he said, don't ever forget, this is real money. When you get in that chair and you think you're playing a game, don't forget it's real money. And he said, you have to decide.
What a setup.
No doubt, right? And he said, you have to decide whether you're going to be conservative or aggressive. Because if you're conservative, you might get to 8,000, 16,000, take the check and walk away because you used your lifelines. If you're going to be aggressive, you might go for it early. You might wind up with nothing, or you might get into the six figures. And so he looks at us, and right, this guy's got more money than God from this show, right? And he looks at it, he goes, if it was me, I would be conservative. And like our jaws drop, like, why, man? You got more. He goes, because I'm Scottish and I'm cheap. And I've got Scottish blood in me, so I could totally relate to that. So I was very conservative, played the game, and got a run of questions that I knew, got to $32,000, got it right, still had 2 lifelines left. And at $64,000, my phone a friend didn't know it. 50-50 didn't help me. I had a coin toss. It was a free guess, and I guessed incorrectly. So, but what an experience, right?
For sure.
To be sitting across from Meredith Vieira, and to be, you know, and as I'm sitting there, and when I got to that studio the first time, I'm like, oh my God, if you work hard enough, you can achieve a goal, because this is what I pushed from 1999 till now. I pushed for this, and I am freaking here. And if I walk away with $1,000, I still learned that I can get the goal. Now, I was more happy to walk away with 32,000, but you know.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, not a bad take for being on a game show, and you have a tremendous experience to talk about. So, I mean, that's why I was curious about it. I was just kind of fascinating what that would be like. So, I mean, don't get nervous if I tell you that when we put this out, I mean, 1 million people will listen to it.
Man, I hope so. And I hope we help all 1 million of them.
Well, I hope so too. So maybe, you know, maybe you can help with that. But listen, you know, let's talk a little bit about, you know, some of the other serious topics that do come along with this. You know, so you're on the show, you've set a goal to be on the show, and you're feeling a little, you know, stress as it relates to that. So now this is something that you talk about. It's something that you do for a living, essentially. How did you get into that? Did it start with the game show? Where did all this begin for you?
The speaking about it is kind of a sideline. In 2001, I actually presented at a conference, and I bombed. I'll be honest. I was one of the presenters, and the keynote speaker there was Tom Peters.
Okay.
And so Tom Peters said a lot of things, and he said, you know, and my story was that if you want to move to, it was HR systems at the time. If you want to move to automation, you can do it a little bit at a time. And that was going to be my pitch, right? And just before I get on my breakout session, Tom Peters goes up there and goes, if you want to move to automation, you need to do it all at once. And, you know,
now Tom Peters has written, I don't know, a number of books. He's well known in his field. Right. So
then I get up in my audience, and I'm just like, you know, I know Tom Peters said this, but I thought this, but maybe I'm wrong. And of course the reviews came back. You know, people were leaving like they needed people on the airplane. Exit rows are here and here. and I bombed, and it was the longest hour of my life. And the feedback came back, and I think I got the 68th highest score out of 70 presenters or something like that. It was awful, right? So yeah. I was like, I don't ever want to do that again unless I can get good at it. And Tom Peters, in his pitch, said, you know, if you're having problems with your public speaking, you need to go to Toastmasters. And I'd never heard of Toastmasters.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, you know, the numbers indicate that the patient had really bad problems with speaking. So I joined Toastmasters. and just committed to becoming a better speaker, which meant I was more of an audience focused speaker, and not, hemming and hawing and saying, well, gosh, I may be wrong, and just being self-serving, right? So for years I was in the Toastmasters program. They have an annual world championship of public speaking. So you start, 30,000 people start out, and if you keep winning, you go on. And in 2011, I made it to the final 9. And so I got to speak in Las Vegas, which we can talk stress again, but and then we're going to get to the big moment of my life. 2015, I made it to the semifinals, and we were supposed to, it happened to be in Vegas again. So my wife and I were supposed to go to Vegas for the semifinals. And 1 week before we were supposed to go, I had a heart attack, which really negatively impacts your ability to speak on stage. If you're
well, it kind of has an overall negative effect.
Totally messes up your day.
Yeah.
So and that's where we get to the stress.
Yeah.
And so 2001 to 2015, I built these skills in public speaking, but what are you going to talk about? Well, the pursuit of millionaire. But 2015, I get a heart attack, and then the recovery, which we'll get into, and the ways to lower stress just became this topic that people are very interested in. I mean, we get stress from.
Oh yeah.
And
well,
I don't know.
When you have a heart attack, you're staring this down in the mirror, right? I mean, that's kind of like, well, I need to take action on this to improve my health, and unfortunately there's an alternative. Obviously you made the right choice because you're here with me today.
Exactly.
But what is that like when that occurs and you're thinking, oh crap,
right?
What's going through your head in that oh crap moment?
Yeah. So it's interesting. 3 months before then, I ran into a fellow Toastmaster public speaker. He also happens to be a minister. And I said, Tom, I haven't seen you in a while. What's new? He said, well, I had a heart attack. I'm like, dude, you're my age, you're about my size. Neither one of us would, win a fitness competition, but neither one of us are, the poster child for who you would expect to have a heart attack. Neither of us spoke. I'm like, so tell me what happened. And, if you ask a Toastmaster, public speaker, minister to tell you what happened, you're going to get a long story.
Yeah.
And he told me all about it. And he told me leading up to it what the symptoms were. So the week before I had the heart attack, I would have something happen. I'm like, that's what Tom said. That's what Tom said. And what do we do, right? You got all the stress. You've got all these symptoms happening. And so the first thing I do is I say, I need to go to the doctor after I go to Las Vegas. And then the next week. And so eventually I need to go to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
Well, on Thursday, my heart said, no, you're going today, buddy. And that's a wake-up call, right?
Yeah.
And even then, I go through this, well, why me? I don't smoke. I'm a little overweight. I've seen people who smoke that are significantly overweight and they're out running around. Why me? And the answer is, because it was you, right? And then the doctor comes in and he says, you need to manage your stress. Not you need to cut down fat, you need to cut down sugar, any of those things. All of those things were true.
Yeah.
But the first thing he picked out was you need to manage stress. And I said, okay. He said, you need to take a week off every 3 months if you can do it. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I said it in front of my wife, so I had to do it.
Yeah. It's kind of on at that point. Now, how old were you when you had the heart attack?
52.
52. Okay.
So, yeah, and my wife said, you're going to do it. And, I don't want to set up an eHarmony profile because you're gone. So you are going to and manage your stress. And so what I did was, after I recovered, and the recovery from a heart attack takes a while.
Yeah.
I started looking for how to manage stress. And I stumbled onto it almost when we took that first week off. And it's a heart attack in August, recovery and not working much through December, and then January back to work, and March is 3 months. And she's like, we're taking a week off. We're going to stay home. You're not fully recovered, but we're going to take a week. You're going to take a week off work, and we're just going to do little things. So day one, we took our youngest son to the zoo. And at the end of the day, I got on Facebook and I type, hey, here were the great things that happened today. And I got a bunch of likes. And, if you get likes in Facebook, that's like, oh,
So somebody likes me
without Facebook and likes, right?
Yeah.
You take pictures of your family, go, do you like them? Do you like them? And to random people in the street. But so I got likes, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I'm going to do it tomorrow. And we went to the art museum, and I did it the next day. And the next day we did something else. And every day I just kind of put this little summary out, and people really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed doing it. And so I thought to myself, how long can I keep finding great things to put on social media? And the answer is what, 7 years almost now. You just train your body and your brain rather, to look for what's good.
Yeah.
And the exercise of doing that lowers your stress, because it's not difficult at all to find out what's messed up in the world right now. Turn on the news, go on social media. There are people who will point out everything that they believe is messed up in the world.
Yeah.
You can constantly be bombarded. And when you do that, it causes your mind to produce the stress hormones, and that negatively impacts your heart health, your brain health, your overall health. And so I kind of turn that down. You can't eliminate bad news, but turn that down as much as I can, and turned up looking for what's good in the world. And that, as much as anything, has made a difference in how I manage stress and my health.
Well, you bring up something. I think this is really important. I talk about this quite a bit. Listen, mobile phones, yeah, they're practical, they're good, blah, 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 blah. But they're really not. They're really killing us. And then, the social media aspect of it that comes along with that, it can be rough to get out on social media if you allow it. And so I think what's interesting is you basically have said, well, I look at social media, but I've just flipped it. So what advice would you give for people that are essentially, in the statistics basically say, hey, we're addicted to our phones? I think Apple says we log on to our phones. I don't remember. I haven't looked at this forever, like 76 times a day or some crazy number like that. And so usually if you're either looking at email or you're on social media. So what's a good practical tip that you give people to try to manage a more positive way to use these tools?
I give several. Number one is I will shut off my phone or just use it to play music on the speaker.
Sure.
And you can use the technology. If you just default it, you're going to be addicted. You are going to be addicted. You're going to get pop-up messages from text messages, from emails, from Candy Crush, you name it. It's going to constantly hit you there. I have turned my phone to where the only thing that pops up for a message is from what do they call them? Key contacts or something like that. And so my wife, my sons, my boss at work, and sometimes other people, like right now I've got we're building up my new website, and so the people who are responsible for that, when they need my attention, they need it right away. And so that'll pop up. Anything else, no. And a couple times a day I will check my email, and you just set that expectation. Look, I've heard a lot of people recommend 11 and 3. Just you check it a couple times. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is social media. I don't allow any social media notifications to come to my phone, because it'll always say, hey, so-and-so commented on your post. And then what do you do? I got to find out what they said, right? And that's what they want. I read, and this goes back to 2019. So in the pandemic, this number went way up.
Oh,
but the average person spent, I think it was 2 hours and 24 minutes per day on social media.
Yeah.
That's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever. And so every one of those people I just mentioned, every one of those companies I just mentioned knows what the pie is. They know it's a 2 hour and 24-minute pie, and they want a bigger piece. So they are doing everything they can to keep you on there. And my drug of choice is Facebook, as I mentioned. And so what is Facebook? Is it positive? Is it negative? Facebook wants to be sticky. And whatever, right? They do.
Yeah.
And whatever, and I know you probably had this too. You're talking about something, and I'm not gonna mention an example because I don't want my ad to be, I don't want to see ads for 2 weeks. But my wife and I have been talking about a given product, and then all of a sudden Facebook starts popping up ads for it, right? They want to give you what you're interested in to keep you there, to make
Yep.
you go the ads, right? Okay, so if you're looking at negative arguments, you don't even have to participate. If you have paused your screen on something negative, they know you're reading it, and what are they going to do? They're going to give you more. So what I do is, there are people that, I love them in real life, but they are so awful on Facebook. I just block them. You don't unfriend them. I don't want to have the "why did you unfriend me" conversation.
Yep.
There have been a few that have been so awful, and I don't want to be known as their right. But in general, I just block them. And I think, in real life, wouldn't that be great? Somebody comes in and they just, these people, they suck all the energy out of their own. Oh, life sucks so bad, right? If you could block them in real life and they didn't know they were blocked, I mean, that'd be awesome. It's like, boop, you went away. But you can do that on Facebook. And so I put the positive people go to the top, and the negative, argumentative, I don't even care if I agree with them, right? If they're just arguing and stirring stuff up, I don't need that in my life. I don't need that stress. So block them. That's the block works real well. Unfriending. I have had people that said, I can't stand it anymore, I'm getting off Facebook. And I understand that. I want to use that to help people. I want to use it to help lower my stress, lower other people's stress. So I won't get off Facebook, but I will indiscriminately, well, no, very discriminately, actually, block people. You are not going to lower the world's stress. I need to block you, set you off to the side.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did get off social media for a while. And when I really decided to rekindle my business and start the podcast, we hopped back on, and I've been, I'll say, pretty diligent about how I use it and who I allow on. Interestingly enough, as somebody who has a podcast called True Man Podcast, and many people ask me, well, is it faith-based? And of course, I'm a Christian, I'm a man of God. Instagram's got to be the worst. I have more half-naked women trying to barge into my Instagram than I can even count, and it really bugs the daylights out of me. Now, I delete those people instantly.
Mm-hmm.
But I've said to people, and I get them on Facebook too, not as much as I do on Instagram. And I've said to people, listen, I feel like this is a test every time I get one. Like, are you the true man that you represent? And listen, I'm sure people have slid through on some of my accounts, but man, if I instantly smell a rat, I delete it right away. Because I don't want that stuff around. And, the bottom line is, you can't catch everything, but I don't want that kind of stress, and I don't want it to reflect on my brand.
Right.
Because I use social media as a part of my brand, to be perfectly honest. And I don't think I'm hiding anything there. I mean, anybody that goes out and looks at my social media, it'll be plain as day. What I'm trying to do, but I'm also trying to minimize that stress level by getting some of that other crap out of there. So, but this is a good conversation, because listen, you can get caught up, and we don't need that kind of stress in our life.
No, and you're right, 100%. I like the faith-based angle of your podcast. I'm a Christian as well. I don't do Instagram anymore, and it's a lot for the reason you said.
Yeah.
The only thing I was doing Instagram for was I could put pictures out there. My mom is on Instagram and she's not on Facebook. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, well, she some of the language she saw on Facebook she didn't like, and so Instagram she could just focus on the pictures. I get it, but then I realized I don't need to do that. I just text my mom a picture every other day or so. Hey, here's a picture of Beth and I on vacation. Here's a picture of the kids doing this, and it works out fine. It's a direct into her, and I don't have to deal with all of the things that Instagram brings. negative
Right.
things that Instagram brings to the table. And you're right. You get some of that on Facebook, but it just seemed like Instagram was worse.
Yeah, it's slimy. But let's jump off that because that's that I think we covered that pretty good. But listen, let's talk about. I mean, let's dig into some other areas of stress here. I mean, I will say before I do jump off, I mean, I do think that our mobile phones and social media and the things that come along with that, those are big stressors. But other than that, there's a lot of things that go on in our lives, namely our jobs. That's the one thing I hear most guys, I'm going to say our age, we're similar enough in age. I was at an event on Friday night and I heard a gentleman say, oh, my job, and listen, none of us want to work. That's the truth be told. None of us want to work. But I mean, when gas is $5 or $6 a gallon, you're kind of limited in your options. So how do we maneuver through life trying to lower, our stress when it feels like, and especially over the last couple of years with COVID, social unrest, the list just is endless right now. It just feels like you have constant waves of stuff coming at you. How do we maneuver through all this?
But yeah, you never avoid it all. I'm a big believer in dropping those things that are stressing you where you can't do anything about it, and you don't need to do anything about it. All right.
Sure.
So negative news, and my younger son will occasionally, I'm stressed out about this. I'm like, what can you do about it? And if you can do something about it, then by all means, make the world a better place. If you can't do anything about it, and then you need to focus your energy elsewhere. You only have so much. I'm a big believer in saying no, and I know that's easier said than done.
Oh boy.
But what can I say no to? Because if I say no to something here, I'm going to be able to say yes to something better. And so as much as possible, I try to say, can I really, this is bad news. Can I do something about it? Or is it out of my control? So there are some things over here that I can do to make the world a better place, to make my family happier, to make myself happier, and focusing my efforts there. It's not perfect. You'll never be stress-free. I like the quote from Zig Ziglar: all sunshine and no rain makes for a desert. There's
yeah.
There's going to be stressful moments, but
sure.
If you're consciously avoiding as much of that extra minutia as you can, that extra stress, you're going to be happier. And then there are things that you can do things about, and then you do that. And the job can be stressful. And I am fortunate at this point in my career that my day job, I have a boss who is very, he's a friend, he's supportive, we want to get the work done, but he doesn't bring the extra angst that some bosses do. And I know there are terrible bosses out there and or terrible companies, and I'm fortunate not to have to deal with that. I don't have really good advice for it if you've got a terrible boss, what to do. I know the last time I had a terrible boss, what I was thinking about doing when they changed bosses on me. You know what? The job market is good. The boss is terrible. And what is the number one reason people leave their job? Because they got a bad boss.
Yeah.
Yes. And if it comes to that, I was ready to go. I was ready to just, I'm done here. There are other companies out there.
It's really interesting because I think COVID was just enough break for a lot of people, whatever that looked like, but it was enough to make you think. And I'm convinced that this whole kind of, resignation thing that we're going through. I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's about the money. No, it's about people that have had their souls sucked out of them.
Yep.
And are looking for meaning. And I think that that's a lot of it. I mean, I honestly I think there's a small percentage that just want to go lay by a beach someplace and call it a day, but that's not realistic. And so, we have to find things that are realistic. And I have people all the time that are complaining about their job. Well, I don't know what I want to do. And listen, this is a huge challenge and causes stress in and of itself, right? Now, I happen to be doing something that I want to do. And some of it I fell in place by this podcast fell in place by accident. I mean, it was a complete, like somebody else suggesting do it. I didn't even know what a podcast was, to be perfectly honest. And I absolutely love it because I get to meet people like you. And not only am I benefiting from it, but you're benefiting from it, and the people that listen are benefiting from it. And that gives my life purpose. And I think that that's what a lot of people are looking for right now.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I remember a while ago in my career telling my wife, I don't know, am I really making a difference here? And I was working at the time in our pulp business for International Paper, and then I realized what we do. We make pulp in that business that goes into diapers and adult diapers, and great source of humor in internal discussion sometimes. But the fact the fact of the matter is that an aging population, it's a quality of life thing. If you can give them those nice depends, that it's a quality of life. And on the other end, there are, in the developing world, there are children who normally wear cloth diapers. It's a big deal to go to church on Sunday and have a diaper that they can stay all day in church and take the baby. So it's a quality of life thing. And do I make the diapers? No. Do I sell them? No. Do I help people do that? Yes. And it's like, okay, so I'm making a little bit of a difference there. And when you can tie yourself to, I'm making the world a better place in some way, that helps manage the negative stress that can come with the job.
Well, and I have a hunch you'll tell me that that's why you're, a speaker and an author, right? It gives you an opportunity to really look into somebody's eyes. And this is why I'm so ecstatic about everything opening up. Now, listen, I was doing a bunch of stuff online, and it Zoom's great. It provides us an opportunity to do, an interview that we're doing now. Man, there is nothing better than being able to look somebody straight in the eye and have a conversation with them. And so I'm trying to get out as much as I possibly can. But I'm sure you feel the same way. You're doing what you're doing because you can make a direct impact with people.
100%. Yeah, I actually got back out this year a little while ago, a couple times last year too, but had a conference in Michigan where I spoke, and you're just talking to people, making a difference. And it's from the stage, but it's also sitting there at lunch and talking with people and talking about how to lower your stress. And my thing is, I was lucky because I had a heart attack that changed my life for the better, right? So I want people to be able to get the benefits of the heart attack without actually having the pain of the heart attack. Let's get you past that whole pain point and get you to where you're able to manage your stress better and live a better life without that.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, here again, this is why I do what I do. I didn't have a heart attack, but was I headed towards one? Listen, I think more people than not are, because that's what stress brings on. There may be some natural health conditions that occur, but most of these conditions, severe conditions, are a result of stress in your life.
Yep.
And so eliminating it is, holy cow. And like you said, we're never going to eliminate it, but minimize it. And I do like that word, minimize the negative things that are going on in our lives. And Lord knows there is plenty of them. If you just turn the television on, or like we talked about, you hop on your phone, I mean, you can find something.
Oh yeah. I always enjoy speaking when the room is a little dark, because once it starts lighting up with phones, I realize, okay, I'm probably losing the audience. I need to take a different angle, because eventually, light went on. Okay, so they're no longer paying attention, right?
Well, speaking of which, Well, let's do this because I don't want to miss anything because there's so many uh, different areas of stress. So, if is there an area that we haven't touched on thus far that you think is critical that people know and understand so that they can have a higher quality of life?
So I've got this. I've got a PDF that I'm gonna have. If you would be so kind as to post it on the show
Yeah.
note. It's the 9 S's of stress management, and I don't have it right in front of me. But it's 9 areas that I found it, and the biggest ones we've talked about, right? Look for what's good in life. Kind of subtract as much as you can what's bad in life. Um, I am a big believer in if you are going through a stressful time with because there are illnesses and there are deaths. Lost my father in 2019 after he had a long illness, and so that's a negative, right? So what do? Well, I I actually day after the funeral had to fly to northern Canada, so the whole day was spent on airplanes, crash and burn in the bed. When I got to the hotel, the next morning I get up at 4 a.m, and now it's all coming down on me, right? And
Yeah.
and lost that. And what I did was I went down to the fitness center. They had a 24-hour fitness center. Got on the treadmill and said, play Waylon Jennings. I won't use the Alexa or Siri names because they will start playing it right here on our interview. I said, play Waylon. And I'm not saying, hey, Waylon Jennings is the answer to your stress problems. But what it did for me was it took me back to not when dad was dying, not when he was fighting the illness, but back to when he was younger and we were kids in the back seat and he had an 8-track in the car and mom and him were up front and it was Waylon Jennings and we were on the way to Florida and it takes you back in time to when it was good. And that floods your mind with all the positive hormones because you need that. So a lot of times, past is a great place to visit. You don't want to live there, but that helps. Another one that a lot of people don't like doing, and I'm not necessarily a fan every single time, is step out of your comfort zone. And that doesn't mean jump out of a perfectly good airplane with a parachute. If you want to, fine. I would not do that, but it does mean do something different, do something new. I've ridden a jet ski. It doesn't have to be huge. We went on a roller coaster after age 40. That was an adventure. Little things that move you out of your comfort zone because that reprograms your brain. Because if you just sit on the couch in your comfort zone the whole time, you wind up kind of turning into the couch potato, and that is a stressful existence. Because in the back of your mind, I need to do something different. So out of the comfort zone, and that can also include, for me, a comfort zone is planning. So I like to plan and plan and plan and plan, right? So get out of that comfort zone, Phil, and actually do something, and don't plan it to the nth degree. I get, that the career has been a lot of planning projects. Well, maybe you need to just do instead of plan the whole time. So get out of the comfort zone, and a lot of times in community with like-minded, spend time with people who have shared interests. You don't have to think alike. I've got all kinds of friends that have different ideas about life, different political leanings, different religious leanings. That's fine. It is, as long as we can have a respectful conversation and spend time together in community. That is just such a positive way to beat stress.
Yeah, I agree. That'll improve your quality of life tenfold, for sure. Just doing that. So as we begin to wrap up today, yes, we will include the PDF file in the show notes. So how else would you recommend people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about stress and how to minimize it?
philbarth.com. It's the new website. It just went live last week. The team that put it together did an incredible job. Can't say enough good things.
They did. It looks good.
Oh, and on Facebook, just send me a friend request. I think it's philbarth.7. It might be Phil. If it's a Phil Barth in Ohio, it's probably me. Fortunately, I wasn't born with the name John Smith, so I'm fairly easy to find. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn as well. Phil Barth in Cincinnati. Those are my social media. I'm on YouTube as well, but I think if you're on the website and you click, it'll take you to my YouTube channel. So
Well, listen, I can't have enough Phil Barfs or John Smiths on the podcast because, quite frankly, it's easy to say. And I like that. Anybody that's listened to the podcast knows I can butcher a name with the best of them and just move right through. I just apologize and move on. It's I appreciate your name immensely.
I got the best of both worlds. It's easy to pronounce, and there aren't that many people named that.
Yeah. So it worked out really well for me, and I greatly appreciate that. Believe me. But I mean, at this point, I think anybody that listens to the podcast regularly knows that I'm a sucker and I embarrass myself nonstop. So that's just the way it goes if you're going to be in the public eye.
And you laugh and you roll with it and you move on.
Yeah, that's it, which is not easy for a perfectionist, but that's part of getting outside your comfort zone and learning new tricks, so to speak. Well, Phil, I greatly appreciate you being on the show. I've enjoyed our time together, and we'll have to have you back on.
I would love it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Appreciate what you're doing.
You bet. Thank you. Take care.